It's the Holden Commodore that could have been. If GM sold Holden with Opel and Vauxhall to PSA in 2020, rather than axing it, it would be a Stellantis brand today. I'm CarsGuide Deputy Editor James Cleary, and joining me today to look at the 2023 Holden Commodore that does exist in another universe, key contributor Steve Ottley.
Hello.
And our fearless leader, Editor Flynn.
Good afternoon, all.
We'll also take a look at the fresh metal we've been driving this week and unearth the comment of the week, not to mention being on standby to respond to feedback coming in on YouTube because we are live streaming. YouTubers, jump into the comments and get involved as we go. Look, also quick note on housekeeping. Next week's show, again, live stream will be Friday. It's July 8th, but 4 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. So 2 hours later. But let's get into it for now. Holden Commodore in another universe. What if Stellantis had saved it? So we all know that in 2017, Commodore local production stopped. In 2020, Holden stopped. That is, General Motors decided to axe the brand. But what if GM had decided to sell it with Opel and Vauxhall to PSA? Then when FCA and PSA merged, Holden would have become a Stellantis brand. Now, Stellantis has 14 car brands. It's now the world's fourth largest car company. It's an interesting prospect, don't you think? That Mel, there are those 14 brands, and several of them have models where you could potentially twin them with what might have been a Holden Commodore.
Definitely. Could have been 15 brands. But I think what we all need to sort of accept here is that this is all presuming that, or hinging on, if Australia were actually left-hand drive, this might have been a possibility.
Well, that's all the go in our.
Well, I think if Holden was left-hand drive, that maybe might have been less of an issue in the first place. Even.
That's exactly. Well, that's what I was just saying. It's true. Fundamentally, that's the reason why Holden ended, because we represented a right-hand drive market, and right-hand drive accounts for a very small proportion of the world's automotive.
I suppose was that a Vauxhall factor?
But yeah, I was going to say, I think, in this, Holden, the multiverse of madness theory we're putting out here, I think, if Vauxhall is obviously, a right-hand drive market, brand, potentially helps them having another market where they can sell a few more cars, Commodore / Insignia. So, yeah, who knows? I mean, it is a fantastic avenue to go down.
Yep. Now, sorry, Mel, you were going to say something?
I think I was going to say exactly what you're about to say. I was just going to say, blue sky. There's sort of three different directions this could have taken. Back to you, James.
No, not at all. I was just going to kick it off by saying, probably the most compatible and one that helped kick off the idea in the first place. Thank you, Justin Hilliard. Was Dodge and the Charger. You've got a rear-wheel drive. It's a four-door sedan. There's a V6 option, and of course, multiple V8 options. It's conventional. I suppose it's not necessarily recognizing the fact that four-door sedans aren't exactly flavor of the month in this market. But if you're thinking about traditional Commodore buyers and maybe HSV continues on in our alternate universe as well. What about that as a potential twin for a Holden Commodore?
Yeah, I think that's always one of those cars that you look at and go, wow, I think that would have worked here. In some ways, that probably would have worked better than, the Chrysler 300 that we had, which was kind of a, staid design. The Charger's always been a more aggressive, youthful kind of, model that I think would have appealed to that sort of customer. Yes. So I think that's a logical conclusion to go down. To get to, because it's they are very, very similar in concept.
Yeah. And it could have, Evaluate could have been the two-door Challenger as well, which, fundamentally the same mechanicals underneath.
Yeah.
But the problem with those is that, a lot of the problem that the 300 faced is that it was an old design, and kind of at best it was with a 6.4 liter V8, but design that dated back to 2005 when it became a Chrysler Dodge product. But it itself was based on you know, an old E-Class combined with an old S-Class that dated back to 1998.
That's right.
So
grandpa's
they're
automotive,
hardly fresh
actually.
cars.
Yeah.
And there's nothing kind of new on the horizon to replace them either.
But do you know though, that 300 is another one that's on my list. It's an unlikely alternate universe Commodore twin. However, it's kind of had a stay of execution. It's going to run through 2023 at least. It's not as if they're turning the production line off any minute. So it's there. It's still around.
Not in Australia though.
No.
Which does kind of speak to the fact that these large rear-wheel drive sedans are not exactly popular. You know, they can just sort of stretch them out as long as they can.
Well,
just,
look, here's one.
Costs are amortized.
Here's a left field one then. What about Citroen? Okay. C5X, we're about to see that car here. Yes, it's front-wheel drive. Yes, it's small engines, but there's a plug-in hybrid. But more the wagon and SUV in one style of vehicle. You know, that's where part of me was thinking if Commodore had headed down that road, it would have had more potential in this market and others maybe.
Yeah. I mean, I think that was sort of conversations I've had with people over the years, I think the missed opportunity for Holden at the end there was that they didn't really push it was a cross tourer. Is that they ended up calling the Holden wagon? Yeah,
but it had no more ride height. It just had extra.
Yeah, but I mean, but how many SUVs these days are more style over substance? Yes. There is an argument. I mean, look at the Subaru Outback is not a large SUV in the conventional sense, and yet is, if you look at the sales figures, one of the best-selling large SUVs. People have embraced that far more than they've embraced a conventional 3-box sedan design.
Yeah, the Outback's got, was it 25 years of heritage behind it though now?
Yeah, but Commodore's Commodore. That's what they could have. You can try and merge those two concepts together. There's potentially, look. I mean, it's all theoretical, but
anything's possible in our
world. I mean, it maybe would just been a better bet, a slightly higher percentage of helping.
A higher percentage of helping.
Well, let's not forget Holden dabbled in that territory with the Adventure. Pardon the pun, territory there, but with Adventure in what was it, 2004-ish?
Yeah,
thereabouts. Which was very cleverly done and very.
Because there was a lot of experimentation at that point, wasn't there? There was Crewman and all of that emerged around the same time.
And the single cab chassis.
Yeah. I think I wrote a piece recently just to self-promote like I always do. I think I wrote a story about it. The Adventure.
You mean one published on CarsGuide.com.au?
Yeah, that's the one.
Check that out.
I think I noticed it.
The Adventure was probably the right car at the wrong time. It was probably ahead of its time in many respects. If maybe if they had it going VEVF, it might have stood a better chance, but been more of a competitor to the Outback.
Yeah. All right. Look, another one that I've got written down that we know went nowhere was Opel, of course, Stellantis brand. They've still got the insignia. It's been updated. All of that. It didn't work in this context. So I think we can scratch that even in our alternate universe. But what about? Sorry, Steve, you're going to say something?
Well, no, I'm happy to hear your next theory because otherwise I've got a left field one for you.
No worries.
Whatever you've got.
Peugeot, similar. I think it's the same platform.
Well, that's what the ZB.
The 508, similar to Citroen C5X. Sorry, I'm breaking up a little bit. Am I? No. You guys there?
I'm good. Yeah.
Okay. No, sorry about that.
I think it's just Mal.
Okay. What was I going to say? Peugeot 508. Again, it's front-wheel drive, but it's a very, very handsome kind of sedan-style car. I just wonder whether that has some legs.
Look, certainly, I mean, I personally am a big Peugeot fan. I think they design some really beautiful cars that are quite nice to drive. They're very underrated, I think, in this country overall. I mean, obviously, they're a bit, they're more expensive than probably what they should be. They're very much a Volkswagen rival in Europe, but not so much here. But I think that's got merit. I think there's an argument to be made that the Peugeot could help. It could have been an option.
Yeah, good on you, Mel. Well, look, it's interesting.
That was a fantastic point that Mel completely missed. So
it's interesting you say that, Steve, because our old mate.
I'm happy to reiterate it. No doubt we've got exactly the same thoughts.
Birdie has said David Burt, our old mate Bertie. Geez, I just saw that new Peugeot-based Astra. Please come back to Australia. So does that ring any bells with you guys? I think, seen the latest Astra, and it is pretty sleek.
Oh yeah,
definitely. They make some stylish cars. I mean, this is the thing. I think Opel makes stylish cars. I think Peugeot particularly makes stylish cars. But I think
are they in any way as stylish as the Peugeots they're based on, though? Like those Peugeots are insane to look at.
I love the Peugeot. That's the point I was actually making while you were stalled. They're sort of underrated in this country, and I think that's sort of ultimately. I think that was kind of the problem with Opel, was it not? That it didn't really jump out compared to any other, European boutique brand like Peugeot or Citroen or those kind of brands.
Yeah. The 508 is a natural competitor for the ZB in its native markets, replacing the VS Commodore with the EL Falcon.
Yes. Yeah, fair call. All right, I've got one more for you before we head down a different road, courtesy of your good self, Steve. But Alfa Romeo, Giulia, rear-wheel drive. Yeah, there's a 4-cylinder powertrain, drivetrain, and that cracking V6. I wonder if Alfa Romeo would welcome some kind of amortization of its investment in that car through having another badge and putting another body over the top of it.
I mean, you know what I'm going to say as an Alfa Romeo fan, slash tragic slash owner. Look, yeah, so I certainly think there's merit in that. But see, I'd like to throw a curveball at you. Alfa Romeo, they've already set Giulia is that platform is on the Giorgio platform that's on is on borrowed time, because they're looking at electrifying Alfa Romeo. Yes. Stellantis has this huge push towards electrification. What about an electric Commodore?
Yeah, what about it? I suppose it's an interesting prospect, isn't it? Sorry, Mel.
That's another thing that 508 could have offered. There's 2 different levels of plug-in hybrid available overseas right now. Single motor. Did you cover that before?
No, not really.
No?
Go for it.
No.
Right. But the problem is, so even the dual motor one is a bit performance flavored, but it can only manage 0 to 105.2 seconds. I don't think that's fast enough,
right,
to wear a fast Commodore badge.
Right.
The last of the Commodores were doing sub 5s all day long.
Yes.
With 6-litre V8. So if you're going to go more expensive, more tech, and lose the sound, and that the V8, it'd want to be real fast.
Yeah, well, I mean, speaking of self-promotion, I've got a terrific opinion piece up on the site at the moment about, can AMG survive in the electric age? Where you've got
on CarsGuide.com.au.
Yeah, that's the one. That's the one.
That's so tacky to self-promote your own
but
stories.
if you've hitched your wagon,
just reinforcing
that internal combustion star for so long, can you radically and rapidly convert your brand image and bring the people, the devotees that you've cultivated over, in this case, more than half a century? Can you get them loving electric versions of your car so quickly?
Yeah, I mean, I think that sort of. I mean, I think the problem with Holden towards the end was that there wasn't a lot of devotees, were there? The people had drifted away from the brand over time, and perhaps shaking it up, perhaps doing something radical like having an electric Commodore. Might have been what they needed. Like if you think about it as a Tesla Model S rival in large luxury.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where the Commodore skewed towards the end, right? It was very much the higher spec performance orientated cars, the SSs and the SSVs,
True.
that were the popular. They were the volume sellers towards the end.
The one behind you there, the concept, the TT36 concept, is in many ways an early kind of demonstration of what Model 3 became as a form factor. A different engine, etc. But proportionally, there's a lot of Model 3 in that TT36.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's a really good point, Steve, in the sense that we write sedans off, but you think about Model 3, it's a very, very popular vehicle, and it fits the template of a sedan as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I mean, imagine you could have a electric Tirana and an electric Commodore. There you go.
Yeah. All right. Now,
it's an alternative universe to live in.
Let's head down the alternate path. Steve,
oh wow!
You were having some thoughts about another way that Holden and Commodore may have gone.
Not to make Holden people angry at me in the comments, but again, I wrote a piece a few weeks ago on
CarsGuide.com.au?
CarsGuide.com.au. I believe the headline was what was the headline? It was, did General Motors make the right decision to axe Holden?
Okay.
Because, and I really just looked at the current Chevrolet lineup. I was recently in the US, was able to get, up close view of, the current range that they have there, from the little Trailblazer, that we had the Trailblazer on the big, Colorado based SUV. They use it for their, effectively, it's an alternative to the Trax. It's a more stylish, more interesting version of the Trax.
Yeah.
They've got the Blazer is a mid-size SUV that was more interesting, arguably, to me than the Equinox. But you go through it, the Tahoe, the Suburban, they're interesting cars, we see now we're getting the Colorado, the Silverado 1500 is becoming a much more popular thing. They have the Colorado, their version of the Colorado Ute there with things like the ZR2 version of that. Just overall, I think it's a very interesting lineup. And I think, me personally, I know that was one of the things that Holden management liked to tout towards the end, was that they were able to draw from all these different General Motors brands. And in the end, you had, cars that were effectively Holdens, Opels, GMCs, Buicks, whatever, but it was ultimately a hodgepodge of whatever they could get, rather than a cohesive lineup.
The thought being, retire Holden respectfully.
Yep.
Change to Chevrolet and bring in all of that product. Whereas where we've ended up is General Motors specialty vehicles, which is like a toe in the water niche exercise, as opposed to, make Chevrolet a mainstream brand and bring some of the things that it can offer to the market.
Yeah. I just think that lineup, if you had that, it's SUV focused. Now, obviously the car that's missing there is the Commodore. There is no alternative to the Commodore in the current Chevrolet lineup, which kind of says something,
Good
says,
point.
Arguably the closest thing is probably the Camaro. They still have the Camaro. I think we all agree it's on borrowed time as is. So, the Camaro and the Corvette, like we're saying, the SSVs was the popular model towards the end. Those cars have really, they're the cars that have replaced, I think, for a lot of people, those high spec performance Commodores.
What about for the people that really want one? What about a Cadillac? Is there a CT?
CT. They've got CT5, which is, CT5V, which is a performance one. They do CT5V Blackwing, which looks amazing. It's the fastest, I think, the fastest production.
And you can get a manual
Cadillac.
too.
You can get a manual. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Manual Cadillac in 2022.
As opposed to
supercharged V8.
1822. Yeah.
I don't know. I think there was an argument to be made. I don't know if they thought of that in Detroit, if they, had a look at it and said, should we or should we not? I mean, certainly I think the GMSV model works, right? They're probably selling far fewer cars at a much bigger margin, and without the headaches and the hassles of having a large dealer network that, and you're trying to feed cars to, particularly now, particularly in this current era that we're living in with limited supply and all the other challenges that every other car brand's come in.
Well, General Motors is probably suffering post-traumatic stress disorder. They wouldn't want to go in for another big swing. They're just kind of taking it easy and healing for a while.
Yeah. And look, let's be honest, we're a very small market. We sell 1 million cars a year. They're selling a small percentage of a million car market. When they're selling over 1 million, they're probably selling 1 million a month in America, so it's all
with
just
many brands competing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a big deal. All right. That's fantastic. Good discussion. Thank you.
Can I just add one final thing?
Yeah, go for it, Mel.
Steve, I think your Chevrolet idea is nuts. And the one further counterpoint to it and a silver lining to the Peugeot idea would be, imagine if we had a 508 Holden badged 508 that could potentially enter supercars instead of a Camaro next year.
Oh my goodness.
I'd like to just see a Peugeot enter supercars. Wouldn't that be good? The classic.
Oh, I mean, it's a line. Wouldn't be wearing Peugeot badges.
Peugeot.
You don't have to change the badge much.
Just
put a circle around it.
It's the perfect replacement. Now that you think of it, Mal, I'd love to see Peugeot versus Ford.
There's a rendering
that will get the fans.
We just did this.
And supercars racing.
We've just eradicated.
Supercars racing and Peugeot, such a tight fit, from a brand point of view. Perfect.
I personally, last time I went there, I saw so many baguettes and
stripy shirts. And
I've certainly dabbled on the mountain.
All right, good. Let's leave it there. Thank you. And now we are going to move to cars in the garage. Great. Okay, so cars that we have actually been driving, not dreaming about in an alternate reality, the multiverse. Mel, could I start with you, please? It's a vehicle
James.
You've been living with for some time.
Not sometime, but sometime. I will be discussing today my current long-term test vehicle, which I've just had for a month. It is a Volvo XC90 B6R design, so lots of letters and numbers in that name, characters in general.
Yep.
And I've had it for the first month with my family, 3 child seats fitted. So it's the second from the top of the range being the Recharge plug-in hybrid. This one starts at just over 100,000 K, but with options as tested, it's $117,000. It doesn't take much to get you up the charts.
Yep.
But can I say, our design trim, that design has aged really well. It's now 7 years old since we saw the first of the second gen XC90s, and it looks outstanding. And mine's got 22-inch wheels, which look great. More on that later.
You included an image. Maybe we can, Mr.
I'll get to
Sullivan.
that.
There's an image of that rim next to your little Corolla, which is fairly striking.
A story, James.
Oh, I'm sorry, man. Sorry.
Just for context for viewers, if you're seeing a shot on your screen right now of 2 wheels, one is 12 inches, one is 22 inches. And that just shows where we've come from between a 1973 Corolla and a 2022 Volvo XC90 R design. Anyway, under the bonnet of this XC90 R design, the B6 is a 2-litre petrol, but the B6 is turbocharged and supercharged and a mild hybrid. Makes 220 kilowatts and 420 Newton meters of torque. So it's a 4-cylinder engine that has lots of numbers. Mild hybrid in Volvo speak means it's got 48-volt electrics and an integrated starter motor and alternator, but not actually adding to the output of the petrol motor. Now, the car carries an official combined fuel consumption figure of 8.2 litres per 100 kilometres. But I must say, on average, so far for me, I've done 11.9, which is some way off.
11's 12 nearly, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, not bad for a car of its size with a petrol engine, but a long way from its official figure, further than normal. So it's the difference between lab testing and reality. And probably the highlight of my first month isn't really a highlight, more of a low light. And the reason why I've got that 22-inch wheel next to a 12-inch wheel is that last Saturday I woke up to find a flat tyre.
Nice one.
And if you've got 22-inch wheels, that's a bit of a headache.
So you were trying to get the 12 off your Corolla to see if you could actually bolt it onto your Volvo.
No.
Actually, I'd love to see an XC90
good sleuthing
running on 12.
there, James.
12.
Yeah, okay.
I'm afraid the stud pattern's a bit
different.
Bit out.
Yeah.
Sorry, just out of
Otherwise,
curiosity, I just want to know, with this B6 engine, how do they get the cylinders to in the B format?
That's right.
That seems very complicated.
Yeah. The cylinders are curved.
Very Scandinavian.
They're quite flexible.
Yeah, typical unorthodox Scandinavian design, that one.
Amazing.
They've done it simply, subtly,
and safely.
And it works somehow.
Very good.
Anyway.
Very cool.
Had a flat tire. So Saturday morning, flat 22-inch tire. Thankfully, it had a space saver in the boot.
Yeah.
But I rang Volvo roadside. They couldn't help me. I rang the Volvo dealer. They couldn't help me till Monday. Thankfully, it had a space saver in the boot. Yeah. And, space saver life. You're trundling around at 80 kilometers an hour, being very careful, doing your family stuff all weekend.
Yeah. So
thankfully, I didn't have to travel anywhere. Anyway.
Question. From a practical sense, for the dad question. So you've got 3 kids. Are they all in car seats still?
Yes.
And can you get all 3 across the middle row?
Very easily. Very easily. So
that's interesting.
2 harness boosters and 1 0 to 4 forward facing.
Yeah, and it still has that inbuilt child booster. They've got rid of that for the 90. Yeah. Okay.
No, I get the feeling that might not work across global markets anymore. Very clever thinking in the 90s.
It was very clever. Yeah.
And very keen to give it a go, but not fitted to this car. And I'm not sure it's fitted to any current Volvo.
Okay. So what would your sum up line be so far, Mel?
For a 7-year-old car, it looks outstanding.
Yeah.
For a 7-seat SUV, it's not particularly cheap, but the Volvo buyer isn't looking for cheap, I don't think.
Yeah.
And it works well. Good performance.
Very good.
Stand by for more.
I've got to say, attending the local launch of that car, I remember they call it Tor's Hammer or Hammer of Tor or whatever, the T-shaped light treatment. I remember looking at that for the first time on that XC90 and going, that's going to look cool for a long time. And sure enough, I think it has.
Yeah.
Still
great. Does. Yeah. And now it's across the entire range.
Absolutely. And why not? Just before we move on to you, Steve, we did have just circling back to our multiverse Holden Commodore thing, Planes, Trains and Dogs and Cars, regular correspondent, says that, US won't build right-hand drive cars. And that's right. That's why in our multiverse version of things, we are a left-hand drive market. So just to fix that one up. Now, Steve, back to you, back to our garage. And you have been driving something that is electric and interesting. Fill us in.
Yes. So similar, but different to Mal's big family-friendly Volvo. I drove the BMW iX M40 Sport. So obviously the iX is their new, I guess, flagship electric vehicle. It's 141,900. It's got dual electric motors, 240 kilowatts of power, 630 newton meters of torque, I should say.
Which is plenty.
It hauls along for a big thing.
Yeah.
It's got 425 kilometers of range, which is plenty. Frankly, I didn't know what to make of this car. I guess I didn't really have any expectations going in. I wouldn't say I was enamored with the look of it on paper. Certainly the photos. It does still like it does still have that enormous BMW grille, despite the fact it doesn't need a grille, except it's not a grille, it's an innovation panel, because it has all the sensors and cameras and stuff hidden behind it.
An innovation panel.
And apparently it's self-healing, but I didn't think to kick or scratch it.
Right. Because I think that's what my father was thinking when he tried to fix the side gate with masonite. It wasn't masonite; it was an innovation panel to keep the gate just kicking along.
Yeah,
it's not an outdoor material, Dad. But anyway,
yeah. But honestly, I wasn't quite sure. But I loved it. I was I just took it back, and I was quite sad to see it go. It was one of the things I've been very critical with BMW over the years is just how conservative they are with their interior design. They just basically everything looks like they've sent it through the Xerox. If it's you get the 1 Series design. Oh, we need it for the 3 Series. Well, it's plus 10%. Oh, we need it for the 5 Series plus 10%. And they all just look same, which I understand. Probably it's good for customers. They feel a certain familiarity with it, but it was starting to look very dated. I think a lot of BMWs were starting to feel a bit dated and staid. This is completely different. It's a blank piece of paper, and they've done it before. They did it with the i3, and that, to me, was one of the most fantastic interiors BMW's ever done. And this is, I guess, a continuation of that. It looks fantastic. It's just, it doesn't look, it simultaneously doesn't look like any BMW before it, but still feels like a BMW.
Very interesting. That uniformity of design for the interior of BMW. I suppose there's one train of thought that says, look, if you've got the right answers and you know that works, why not apply it to other models? But you're right, it does become fairly same.
Yeah.
And I think the point is with this one, it's still unmistakably BMW.
Yeah, it's still
you're in a BMW.
It's still 100% feels like you're driving a BMW. They
get away with it.
Yeah. Yes. And it's a great use of space. It's got really, it feels really, spacious inside. It's got plenty of room in the back. Still got a decent sized boot. And like I said, it's got 630 newton meters of torque, so it hauls even though it's big. I mean, I just found it a really great car to just commute around. I love electric cars in the sense of, as much as I love petrol. I really love, the classic performance car. I still like going to the service station because I like the smell. But it's like there is something about electric cars and how easy and relaxing and just quiet they are. They're quiet.
You're the guy lurking around in the background in the dark behind the Bowsers, just kind of getting you don't drive to the servo, you just go there.
Put it this way, if Chanel came out with Oda unleaded,
Oda 95.
I would probably buy it because it's just, a little
Oda 100 octane.
Yeah.
Yes.
Can I just add, I think Steve, your car is probably the very same car that Tom White had in the big electric car comparison we published about 6 weeks ago, where we had it against the Polestar 2, the Ioniq 5, and the EV6. And all four of those cars exceeded their official range calculation and efficiency numbers. So unlike the Volvo that I've just talked about, where it was, nearly 4 litres behind its official figure, therefore, over-promising, under-delivering. All four of these electric cars with, against their WLTP figure, over-promised. So you go into it thinking, will it do it? And it did better than it said on the sticker. Which is great.
Did charge it. I just charged it off the old household outlet, I gave it 12 hours and it gave it about, I think, around 20% of battery. So, obviously it's a regular household outlet. It's not designed for that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But I didn't need to. I drove it for an entire week. And I only just then did I start. I think I got down to about 30%. And I was thinking, okay, maybe I should think about charging. But the irony is I actually did take it to the shops, my local shopping center that has EV charging, plugged the whole thing in, managed to find a spot between the Teslas, the blokes sitting there charging their Teslas and reading a magazine. I did actually forget to turn the charger on.
Hey,
so it didn't work. But in theory, it's actually quite easy to live with.
No, that's not your fault. That's a design fault with the charger. It should, there should be some kind of.
That's a hands up. That was operator error.
Okay, very good. Now, Luke, it's interesting you mentioned that grill. I can't help but think of a certain carrot munching bunny when I look at the front of those BMW electric cars. A couple of teeth there. But our old mate Planes, Trains and Dogs and Cars has chipped in again and said, who'd ever think that we'd be asking, please bring back Chris Bangle? And I remember there were people, hitting the cylinder building to have him sacked when his designs started to hit the road.
Well, this is the thing. They love being completely out there with exterior design.
Yeah.
But it's let's be super conservative inside. It's a very funny,
we better keep it moving. And I'm going to go with another Volvo. So this one I found really interesting. The XC40 Recharge Twin, pure electric, twin meaning twin motors. Just under $80,000, 79,490, 300 kilowatts, 660 Newton meters. So broadly similar to the iX, Steve. All-wheel drive, of course, with a motor front and rear. Fast, 4.9, 0 to 100. On the plus side, I reckon it's well equipped for the money. 80 grand is a fair chunk of change, but this car is well equipped in terms of tech, safety, convenience features, all of those things. Also, the interior is really cool. Talking about interiors, I think it's very sleek and very Scandinavian, kind of minimalist, cool. Nice seats, great audio. I think it's Harman Kardon. I found it confusing how to start and stop the car because the start button is actually in the seat. Once you're sitting in the car, all you got to do is select drive or reverse and off you go. So I was wondering how to actually proceed in the car until that kind of worked that out. And also at 450 k's of range. So again, similar to the iX. The minus side, it was pretty firm on the ride, and I couldn't match your 22s, Mal. This is only riding on 19s, but still, I think it's an electric car thing at times. It's got a fair amount.
Well, they're so heavy. They obviously,
I drove the same car, James, and I found it quite short in travel. Like over suspension humps, you're kissing the bump stops.
Okay. Well,
I wasn't launching over them.
Those kind of high frequency little shuddery bumps that you get, it wasn't good over those. But in some,
I reckon that's a Volvo issue.
Okay, not just this car.
My XC90 is on airbag suspension, might I add, so it's a bit better and handles the 22-inch wheels well. Yeah. But not so your XC40.
Well, I enjoyed driving it, and I'd say, it's an interesting argument if someone wanted to take it up. I think it's not bad value, irrespective of the fact that it's an EV. If you take it in its market segment, it's actually reasonably good value for an EV in that part of the market. So
which is the same thing you said about the iX.
Yeah. I was just going to say, while it's Volvo's smallest SUV, it's not particularly small and quite well packaged.
No, and the rear seat's pretty good. In terms of adults being able to sit comfortably, it's got that on its side for sure.
It does that. What did you say? It does 4.9 not to 100.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
the
sub
funny
5-second car. It's really quick.
Yeah, it's the funny thing about electric cars is we've become obsessed with the notion of them doing 0 to 100 like super quick. Because I think I just drove the EV6 where it was doing it in 5.2 or something. You think, oh, that's probably not that quick compared to other electric cars, but it's like, who cares? Honestly, if you're doing sub 5 launches, now I've had this problem with electric cars because they're so quick, they're so easy to go quick. I'll make myself car sick because it's just like, oh my gosh, I got to stop doing it.
Off into a whole other podcast discussion around, are we ready for this kind of acceleration when people who maybe aren't used to it pin the the accelerator, and bingo, they're going way faster than they would have previously.
But I'll tell you this, I don't know.
And people mistake the brake. You go.
Yeah, I don't know the iX's 0 to 100 time, and I don't care. That to me is the least of its issues. Whether it does it in 3 seconds or 6 seconds,
pure Steve Ottley,
it doesn't really matter.
Steve Ottley, laissez-faire attitude.
Yeah.
Just amazing.
Or I think 1.7 seconds, like the McMurtry at Goodwood.
Oh boy,
yeah.
Imagine that.
Yeah, was it one fan or two on the back of it? It was just basically.
I think it's 2 fans, but
1.7
seconds.
Okay, well that's our garage. We are now going to go to the comment of the week. Okay, so comment of the week. And last week we were talking about Chinese cars that we need. And in the comments, particularly on YouTube, there was lots of back and forth commentary around China's bullying and trade agreements. Our B even claimed that we were being paid by the Chinese Communist Party. And I can tell you, our B, we were paid to make that video by CarsGuide. Not by anybody else.
I was going to say, I didn't get an envelope from anything.
No, that's right.
So I'm feeling pretty ripped off.
I think that they're normally brown paper bags, aren't they? I mean, anyway, no, we weren't paid by anyone other than our employers. And I think an interesting comment was Dan White. He said, these cars will do well in Australia as the other brands have priced most families out of the new car market. People will forget about the China trade issues, just like people who buy Japanese cars have forgotten about the bombing of Darwin and Sydney, And I think interesting case study was, Mel, we were only talking about this yesterday when the French government was conducting nuclear device testing at Muir Atoll in the Pacific. And there were front page stories in Australia about these are the French brands not to buy. I had it recounted to me that all Peugeot needed to do was add free air conditioning, and the sales started to tick back up. So the price of people's moral conscience seemed to be about $1,500.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing, right? Like look, obviously there is a very large and complex political discussion around particularly Chinese cars. The facts are, and from a CarsGuide from the CarsGuide point of view, people buy them. There's a lot of MGs, a lot of Havels, a lot of LDVs that we are buying them in a significant volume. MG's a top 10 brand.
It's a top 10 brand now.
Like
sure.
you can't,
I think it's number 8.
Can't ignore it, and because consumers are not ignoring it. You say we vote with you. People vote with their wallet, right?
It's true. All right.
Cars are the cars.
There you go. And look, with that, we've reached the finish line. So it's time to say thank you, Steve.
Thank you, James.
And thank you, Mel.
Bloody beaut. Thanks, James.
And thanks most of all to our listeners and viewers. And thanks to our production multitasker, Mr. Brett Sullivan. Thank you, Brett. And again, as a tip of the hat to Mr. Pritchard, he's wearing a T-shirt saying, I would lose weight, but I don't like losing. Jump into the conversation. CarsGuide's on Facebook and Instagram, or email us at comments@carsguide.com.au. Listeners, please take a moment to rate and review the show. 5 is the preferred number of stars. Thank you. And viewers, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure to subscribe to the CarsGuide channel so you can stay on top of all our latest content. Remember, next week's show will be Friday, the live stream, July 8th, but 4 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, 2 hours later than we have been previously. Before we go, I was in my local Repco, and old mate that usually serves me looked a lot more balanced and stable on his feet than he normally does. So I asked him what was going on. He said, look, I didn't think orthopedic shoes would work for me, but I stand corrected.
that was good.